In this online module, we will be looking at three uh, different types of neurodiverse students who oftentimes present behavioral challenges in the classroom. And those are students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism, and emotional and behavioral disorders. And what I'm going to do in this online presentation is give you an overview as to each of these three neurodiverse types of learners so that in class we can look at how do we best teach these students so that they can find that positive niche in the classroom. So let's go ahead and start with ADHD. The definition is simply there's a disorder in executive function skills. And executive function skills are those skills that we need to be successful in the classroom and also in our daily lives. And students with ADHD have a difficult time focusing in on one thing. It's like they're being bombarded by 100 people speaking to them at once, and it's hard for them to sift out what are the key things that I need to be focusing in on. They have a hard time organizing their time, organizing their materials, organizing, prioritizing, those types of things. Oftentimes, they struggle with working memory as well, in that they'll forget something that was just told to them. Or a teacher will say, all right, I want you to get out your blue math folder. And 10 seconds later, the student has his yellow science folder on his desk. So he remembered the folder part, but didn't remember the color. And also that has to do kind of with that organization of not realizing, oh yeah, we're immediately after recess, it's math time. And that student can look around and see that everybody else has their blue folders on their desks, but it doesn't compute in his brain. And think about how difficult that makes life if you're constantly feeling unfocused, disorganized, or lost as to what am I supposed to do next. Students with ADHD also have a hard time inhibiting motor activity. They are in constant movement. Their foot is tapping, they're tapping a pencil on the desk, their fingers are tapping. It's just constant movement. And oftentimes teachers feel like, oh, that student's just trying to get at me. Really, no. There's like no filter to say, whoops, you need to be still. So you're fighting against a raging ocean that you're not going to win. So we have to look at how can we help make that motor activity more productive. And also, students with ADHD tend to overreact to situations. So something like going out to recess a minute late, most kids are like, okay, that might cause a meltdown for a student with ADHD. So their emotions tend to be overstated. Some of the symptoms that we see in our classes are, as we've already said, that overactive movement. Students with ADHD tend to be easily distracted and they are very impulsive. So something pops in their mind and they'll do it without thinking. In terms of strengths, students with ADHD have a lot of strengths. They often have boundless energy. So our role is how do we tap into that energy so that they're using it in a positive way. They tend to be very creative. They think outside of the box. They have spontaneity. And when they're interested in something, that's the key. When they're interested in something, they tend to be able to hyper focus on that one thing. So if we can find what they're interested in, we can use that to our advantage. So, how is ADHD diagnosed? It has to be diagnosed by a doctor, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. I want to highlight here teachers cannot diagnose. Now, we can suspect, but we do not have the right credentials to diagnose. And another thing, if you as a teacher go to a parent and say, I think your child has ADHD, the school district is liable to pay for any medical assessment. So you never, ever, ever want to say to a parent, right, I believe your child has. Now, we can fill out questionnaires, that kind of thing, but we do not diagnose. Now, the difference between those three uh, careers that I mentioned who can diagnose is who can prescribe meds. Psychologists can only diagnose, medical doctors and psychiatrists can provide medication. And that doesn't mean that all students who have ADHD are on medication. It's a parent's option, and oftentimes it's kind of hit or miss because you have to figure out which is the right medication, what's the right dosage. And since children are constantly growing, that medication needs to be consistently reevaluated if it's the right strength. Oftentimes, the process that happens is parents, school personnel coming together, the child, if he or she is older, and there are questionnaires that can be filled out in terms of the most common characteristics we see of students who have ADHD. And then those questionnaires are taken to one of those medical personnel who will evaluate, oftentimes will observe the child, that kind of thing, and then make a diagnosis. The symptoms, we've already mentioned these. Um, they know things, but they make careless mistakes for things that they already know, have a hard time finishing things, they lose interest, they're not seeming to listen, easily distracted. So, what I want you to do is in this presentation down below where you'll see this video, I want you to click on the link and you're going to pretend that you're the parent of a student. Pick the grade level, pick the areas of struggle, right? Might loses attention, struggles in math. And then you're going to hear an explanation from a student at that grade level of what it feels like to have ADHD. And there's also a simulation that helps you see how a student with ADHD has a hard time filtering out things that they hear in their environment. And just a couple of things, like I said, we'll spend more time on this in class, but if we're providing that strengths-based support, so instead of focusing in on what a child with ADHD struggles with, what can they do, or how can we make the classroom successful for them? Well, the first one is we have to be engaging in our lessons. So we can't stand up there for 20 minutes and expect a student with ADHD to listen. You break it up. Maybe you present for 5 minutes and then you have students do something active. Also bringing in the child's name. So in what you're teaching, so if I'm giving examples in math, I might say, so Alyssa has 5, blah, 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 right? Because hearing their name can help that child pay more attention. Employing humor, ADHD students oftentimes respond very well to humor. Providing immediate feedback to let them know they're on track. And because they get easily distracted, it's important to get that immediate feedback as to what they're doing well. As we've already said, students with ADHD tend to be creative, so activating their imagination, decreasing the length of assignments or lessons so that they can do short bursts of focus, making sure that we're incorporating physical activities, and we'll look at examples of that. So if we're doing some mental types of things where they really have to listen and focus, then let's practice it doing some kind of physical activity. And going along with that, providing hands-on activities as well. A couple more things. Alternating our voice. Oftentimes, students with ADHD feel like they're getting yelled at all the time. So using a soft voice, by changing the tone of your voice, it helps ADHD students get a message, oh, I better listen. Wait, something's changed in my environment. We also have to teach students with ADHD how to self-monitor and give them the power to say, oh, okay, I'm moving around too much. I need to do this or I need to do that. giving students focus items that allow them to keep moving, but in a way that's not going to distract others. Making our lessons novel. So, using the smartboard activities, video clips, drama, small group activities, all of those types of things help. Also, teaching students how to do physical relaxation. We're seeing in more and more of our classrooms um, teachers incorporating some yoga, and that helps all students, but it really helps students with ADHD. I am going to put up an article that I want you to read. It's written by Temple Grandin, who, um, oh, sorry, this is for autism. Sorry.